Hey, what is up, everybody? It's Friday. So you know what it means. It's time for a little bit of stoppage time. Friday, November 15th. We are, according to the Christmas tree that's going up at the big outdoor mall across the street from my house, we apparently are into the holiday season. I think honestly, some folks are just getting into the holiday season early as a salve, as a protective emotional band-aid for the stressors of recent weeks. But we're here nonetheless, so let's embrace it. I was at the Capital One Cafe getting some work done this morning. They just opened up a new location across the street, so I'm going to start taking advantage of that. And they were playing Christmas music. Like I walked into Frank Sinatra singing some Christmas song, and then Bing Crosby singing some Christmas song, and then Mariah Carey singing one of her Christmas tunes. So it is that time of the year apparently. Although my daughter vehemently denies that and says, no, shame on the rest of the world. Let's not start this until the day after Thanksgiving. So I'll ride with her, but I'll enjoy what's going on in my neighborhood. So bunch of stuff on my mind this week. As you know me well enough to know, there's rarely ever just a week in which I'm singularly thinking about one thing versus another. My mind is a bit of a messy set of wires and links and synapses that is kind of always thinking about a whole bunch of different stuff, like I'm sure you do in your life. Or maybe some of you are just better at honing in and focusing in on one or two things per week. But me, not so much. I'm wildly curious, and that just kind of keeps me constantly engaged. But I am kind of really focused and a bit frustrated, maybe a little disappointed in something, kind of a trend that I see that's really been amplified here this week, last week, in the politics of the United States since our elections. But it's also just kind of presents itself across the spectrum of our societies and our business lives. And so I wanted to hit on it today. And it's just this idea of kind of the complexity of life and our urge to try and make it as simple and dumbed down as is humanly possible. So I've been struck by kind of how reductive we desperately try to be in everything in our lives, whether it's, again, in our politics, in our businesses, in our relationships. We're in this age of kind of hyper oversimplification driven by clips and hacks and speed everything, right? In the entrepreneurship world, it's famous in the last 10 or 15 years for like speed mentoring and speed founder relationships and speed investors. And it's just all bullshit. Like, because the most important and most sustainable things that we have in our lives and in our businesses and in the macro of our societies are the things that take time, are the long form things. So to me, in this ever quickening kind of rapid information age that we live in, where we have a shrinking attention spans and we have juiced up social media, which is faking its way to present itself as like the information distributor of our times, when it's really just like information and as entertainment. We cannot, in my humble opinion, kind of continually chase this fastest, easiest, lowest common denominator. Because throughout history, we've been taught that no matter how many advancements in technology or in communications or in information sharing that we have, like ultimately at the core of every great functional society, and therefore every rich, good, sustainable life on an individual level, are three things that we just have historically always craved as mankind. One is deep personal connections, two is local community, and then three is human conversation. And so while it's been frustrating to me this week to see and kind of experience the world and have to tune down the noise, turn off the volume a bit on this redactive kind of like hyper fast approach to life, it is fundamentally kind of weirdly validating, because the fact that we live in this era, this bubble right now, is one of the main drivers behind one of the core reasons that we do what we do here. That I come on here and share my thoughts in long form with you for 15 minutes or fewer every Friday. It's why we do what we do with Entrepreneurial Thinkers. It's because fundamentally I believe in the power of long form human conversations as not just an agent of more accurate facts and more accurate information sharing, but also as a mechanism for influence, like sustainable positive influence, and then ultimately sustained change. And so, in a complicated and very complex world, we can't hope to solve our biggest problems or seize upon our biggest opportunities for progress through clips and texts and memes is just not sustainable. And there will be people who will come at me and say like, okay, boomer, right? Like, okay, old Gen Xer, like you longing for the days of the newspaper and all that. And it's not that. I've embraced technology at every step along the way. In fact, probably early at just about every curve. But at the same token, I've maintained kind of the foundational truths of our species, of mankind, in both business and in my personal life. And I would argue that when people come to me like, how do you do that? How do you build so many meaningful relationships with people? How have you mentored and advised tens of thousands of entrepreneurs over the last 10 years? How have you been able to keep relationships with people that you've known for 30 some odd years from the very beginning of your career when you were just a teenager to now? How have you had relationships with people that have respected you and leaned on you for your counsel? And they think it's like some magical thing that I have like in me, and it's not. Yes, it is part of my personality and part of my DNA, but it is also part just the fact that I have adhered to some core human principles and basically leaned into those three truths all the time, right? Deep personal connections, or relationships, as I would say, local community, like being present and being active in your local community, and then just human conversation, like long form human conversation. I'll text the shit out of you. I'll WhatsApp the hell out of you. I'll send you WhatsApp voice notes, as my friends and listeners here know. But that's not because I just like to hear myself talk or I want to hear myself see my words on a digital screen. It's because I'm literally trying to just communicate with you, right? And I'm trying to keep these longer form bonds connected, so that we have more deeper understandings of each other. So just a few of the conversations we've had as I talk about entrepreneurial thinkers being kind of a tool for the alternative approach in this environment of information that we live in. Three of the conversations we've had recently have just been fantastic examples of this. One with Marie Rocha, where she and I spoke about local entrepreneurship, small business development, and economic investment in kind of from a small city, Connecticut point of view on the East Coast, right? That's to understand why investment in a local community matters, why supporting and empowering entrepreneurs who aren't the mainstream entrepreneurs, or why investing in and building community inside of what we would call secondary or tertiary markets outside of the big top 5, 6, 7 markets in the country from an entrepreneurship standpoint, why that matters. Like, you got to have a long conversation with people who are deeply expert and are obsessed with these things, and that's all they think about every day. Another conversation like this recently was from here in LA with Guadalupe Tlatenchi, who's the CEO and founder of GTLA Apparel. And she took us deep inside of an industry that's been essentially a bellwether of our US economy and definitely of the Los Angeles economy for more than 100 years, which is the garment and fashion industry, right? Like, and we just scratched the surface with the episode that you can listen to. You can find all these episodes, as always, on any of your podcast platforms, on Spotify, on Apple, on anywhere else you listen to your audio podcast. And then you can find us on our YouTube channel at Entrepreneurial Thinkers with me, Rob Ryan, where you'll also find these Stoppage Time episodes for now. So like you can't fully understand the depth and meaning of the garment industry to Los Angeles until you can trace back the human story of, for example, Guadalupe's family history, and her kind of unintended entrepreneurial inspiration was her grandmother, her abuelita, who was a garment worker, a seamstress here in Los Angeles, right? And Guadalupe follows in those footsteps eventually, and then tells us how she's working with the mayor and sitting on policymaking boards to try and help craft a better, more sustainable industry, so that the garment and fashion industry in Los Angeles continues to persist. Right, which is good for the United States as well, right? And then most recently, in a show that just dropped on our audio channels this week, and will drop on our YouTube channel, the video will next week, with Amantha Bagdon. And Amantha is obsessed with something that we all interact with probably on a regular weekly basis, maybe in some cases, but definitely regularly in our United States healthcare system or outside the US, which is your pharmacia or our pharmacy. She is obsessed with our local pharmacies. She is a technology company founder and innovator inside the space of the pharmacy world, but she comes from inside of that. And again, that's something that we all interact with on a regular basis, and yet probably very few of us have any kind of depth of understanding about how it works, why it's important to us in our local communities, how it stacks up versus like big corporate brand pharmacies. And also like the inefficiencies that exist in it for pharmacists as entrepreneurs, right? Again, that's not a series of messages. That's not a library of information and knowledge that can be passed along in a clip and a meme, in a text, right? So I don't care how fast our information world is moving. I don't care how impressive and incredibly useful these tools that are being developed will become, to augment humanity and to help us be even better. But at the end of that pursuit, I fundamentally do believe that the whole pursuit should result in us becoming better, more capable, more enriched, more connected, more deeply knowledgeable and aware human beings, right? Not be replaced by these things and then become kind of the latest in the series of things that we've diminished to the trash heap of history. So that's why I'm so passionate about the long conversations that we have. That's why I'm so passionate about crafting more opportunities for long form interview and conversational content and information and knowledge to be shared via these stories that we will inside of the Storytellers Company. It's fundamentally why we named the company what we did, because I fundamentally believe in, no matter how the information age accelerates, like the power of human storytelling is key to us sustaining ourselves as a species. As Asher J, our friend, would say. So, quick book recommendation in the spirit of, like, you can't understand where we're going and you can't understand the complexity and nuance and complications of us as a human species and all of that which we create unless you truly go back and understand history and how we got here. So I'm going to recommend this book by Yuval Noah Harari. He's written a series of incredibly insightful books, long books, each over the course of the last 10 years. And the one that I've been listening to recently is called Sapiens. It's a brief history of humankind. There's nothing brief about the book. It is a deep dive into the human species from 70,000 years ago to now. But it's done in a thoughtful, really easily consumable way. I've listened to this book before. I'm listening to it again currently just because I felt that my mind needed to be nourished and I needed to have a deeper appreciation for the complexities of kind of humankind throughout history and not just in our moment. We tend to get so caught up in this hyper short attention span, speedy world that we live in when we're constantly in a hurry to get to the next day, to get to the next thing, to get to the next task. We tend to believe that this era, this bubble that we're living in is somehow completely unique and it's never been experienced before. And while the tools and the machinations of our current existence are, of course, unique to this moment in history, the time in which we live, like the lessons and the truisms that exist in humankind and how we interact with each other, no matter what the tools were or are of the times, that's persistent from the time you either believe we were created or we oozed up out of the dirt. So that's my book recommendation. I implore all entrepreneurs and definitely all investors who are supposed to have long-term horizons in the way that you do business, to make sure that history and the true study of history and the human stories of our historical journeys is a key part of your daily learning and your daily library of life lessons that you're trying to accumulate while you're also studying markets and market timing and new technologies and all these other things and paying attention to kind of the noise bubble that we exist in on a daily basis. I really strongly urge you to carve out time to learn and go back and attach to where we came from, because it's the only way we'll figure out where we're going. So that's it. Happy Friday. I hope you're having a great week. I hope your energy is good. I hope in no matter what the circumstances are that you have faced recently, both either positively or adversely, that you are leaning forward towards the possible, that you are all finding your best pragmatic optimists in you. And I look forward to seeing you right back here next Friday.